The art of photography. It's just a question of balance. What I am about to suggest in this presentation is a choice. There's no rights, there's no wrongs, but it's my way of producing my images. For various reasons, 2013 was a lean year for me for images. This is completed images. But when I look back at the folders that I've stored over 2013, I can easily find over 400 completed images. Now I suppose that's a meaningless figure unless I qualify it just a little bit. What I'm talking about here is not 400 images batch processed in Photoshop in 20 minutes. I'm talking about 400 images which have sufficient quality to encourage me to work each one of them through Adobe Camera Raw as an individual image. Images that I'd be pleased to show you or anyone else as some of my best. And I think my acceptability threshold is set fairly high. So I suppose the question I'm posing here is, how can we create so many images which we would consider acceptably good from a year which was so lean? Well, it's all a question of balance, and photography is definitely an art. In the last 20 years, photography has changed beyond recognition almost, whether we like it or not. Photographic quality is now higher. Efficient image editing has effectively raised the bar. These days we don't accept blown out highlights or blocked up shadows as we did in our film days. Great images are made up of two distinct skills, but I believe there's also a third which sort of sits between the two. The first of those skills are those we need before and up to when we press the shutter button, and also the skills we need afterwards. There's a definite balancing act between these two skills. Up to when we press the button, we can call that our taking skills, and after we've pressed the button and we move on to our image editor, that's the making skills, where we take what we've captured and we make our photograph. But that balance is affected by a number of things, and the obvious are light quality, light quantity, subject matter, camera technique, and yes, our mistakes. The camera doesn't capture what we see. The quicker any new photographer realizes and accepts that, the quicker they're going to learn and produce good images. Why do we shoot RAW? Because the camera doesn't capture what we see. We need the latitude of the RAW file to compensate for what the camera can't do. We also need the latitude to cope with less than perfect lighting and, once again, sometimes our own errors. But we do pay a price for shooting raw images. If we're going to tell our camera not to use its internal software to do anything with the images at all, what we're saying is, do nothing, give me the raw data, I'll take it from here. Which is okay, but sometimes our thumbnails can look pretty dire, can't they? But look a bit closer, because I think many of you have probably got some masterpieces hidden away amongst those files. If we all got together and made a combined list for what makes a great picture, I'm sure we'd find interesting subject in there: photographic skill, good lighting, good tonal range, no highlight burnout, no blocked up shadows, good composition, good viewpoint, and there's probably a number of others we could put in there as well. But is that enough? That may be the ingredients for our picture, but not the method. The method comes after the shutter button is pressed. So what in fact does make a good picture? Well, that's the third skill which I think has a foot in both the before button press and after button press skills. Because we need to know, or how can we take those ingredients, which is our raw image, and find a route to a great picture? Some photographers know a good image when they see one. When the image that's likely to get a 9 or a 10 in a camera club competition appears on screen, they can spot that pretty quickly. But they find it difficult to quantify what's needed when they're in front of their PC with their own images. This is one of the crucial parts of achieving great images. We need to be a judge. We need to be able to look at our own raw images and decide what they need. If we don't know where we're going, how do we know how to get there? This always reminds me a little bit of our in-car satellite navigation, because until we know exactly where we're going, the sat-nav is useless to us. So what we need is image editing skills to get to our destination, but we also need to know how to get there, and that is recognizing a good picture, looking at our own raw files to decide exactly what they need, and that takes just a little bit of learning. Of course, we're now in the digital age and we can shoot as many pictures as we want. And if we take enough pictures, then sooner or later you're going to have a sprinkling of really great images in your collection. But that's not wholly satisfying to us, is it? We want something a little more than that. We can capture some of what we require as we press the shutter button, but rarely all of it. And we achieve the balance in our image editor, particularly now we all shoot raw files. If we can capture 90% of our picture at the taking stage, then we only need to contribute 10% in the editing. Now that is within most people's capabilities and it will show less editing faults. Editing faults tend to happen when you're out of your comfort zone and maybe trying to do the impossible with an image in front of you. What happens when you can only capture 60% at the button press through no fault of your own? Do you walk away, don't bother, or do you have a go anyway? Some of my best images have come from these very situations, and I know some people say, well, go back to the scene when the lighting is better. But that's not very good advice when you're now in a different country. It's okay if you live round the corner. So in that situation, unless your image editing skills are developed enough to contribute 40%, you're in trouble. The photo falls short, it doesn't have what it takes to make a great picture. Now, making up 40% in your image editor is a tall order. But many photographers will still try and end up frustrated because the gap between their aims, their skill level and what is practical is just too wide. And they can sometimes come away with the view that this image editing lark is just far too difficult and too time consuming. When we go out to shoot images, we can't win them all, of course, but we can certainly aim high, can't we? It's the combinations of the before and after button skills, but also what's sort of sitting over both of those skills like an umbrella is knowing what makes a good picture. That's the key. We're still going to take advantage of being out at the right time in front of the right subject, and of course, if we don't trust that to luck and put a bit of planning in, then that improves as well. But we can also add to those images by shooting at other times that often defeat other photographers, and the result is we stand out from the crowd. So there's no rights or wrongs here, just choices, but photography is an art, and it's just a question of balance.